Alright, so the current state of Honkai Impact 3rd right now. Needless to say, Honkai Impact 3rd is an old game if you check on Google, I guess. Its release date was 2016, but that was only for the CN server. Realistically, I think SEA only started towards the end of 2017 or 2018, something like that. So I think a lot of players who are still playing since day one are pretty old players, just in general, you know, not just for a Hoyoverse game, but for a gacha game in general. And I think we're gonna start there, right? So towards the end of part 1.5, or maybe even part 1, I noticed the names in the leaderboards starting to change. And, you know, having recognized most of these names, a lot of them who used to rank like maybe page 1, as some people would say, because page 1 only has the first 7 names, kind of were starting to drop in their ranks, and some of them just didn't show up entirely. And that's probably because the game is just that old. I think a lot of people have a lot of opinion right now on what part 2 is and what it has done for the game or to the game. But if you were to think back, I think Honkai Impact, people are not giving it enough credit for actually tying up part 1 in a neat little bow. Part 1 to many people was a definitive ending, and I think it is the point where people would say, you know, here's my happy ending. I felt like they did a good job. Everyone's happy. Nobody, I mean, except for Kevin and Otto, nobody else kind of really died. So Kiana is on the moon, everyone's happy, you know, and that's where I can leave it. And so story-wise, you sort of like were able to feel kind of like, you know, I've been playing to get to this point and we finally reached it. Then we go to gameplay. Being a player for that long, or like, you know, being a day 1 player, at the release of part 2, you would have probably played the game for like 5 to 6 years. And that's a long time for any game. It doesn't even have to be Honkai Impact 3rd. It's just like in general, that's a really long time. And because it is a game that has leaderboards, which I feel is a double-edged sword, because leaderboards are what I think keeps the game interesting compared to the other Hoyoverse games. But I do think like the leaderboards are also, you know, a reason that people would have dropped the game, because they kind of feel like they've always been keeping up with the meta. And with the story coming to a nice ending, they probably also felt like, I think I can leave this game here and I've done everything I've wanted to do in the game, and this is where I will take a break and reassess, or maybe just drop gacha games entirely. So some people that I know, they drop gacha games, they went back to playing like PC games or console games, and some people dropped it for other gacha games like Zenless Zero and stuff. But I feel like if you're a Honkai Impact 3rd player, you kind of bring like a different mindset to like Genshin or Zenless Zero, Honkai Star Rail, because there are no leaderboards there. So you're kind of like in your own domain, in your own space. You don't really have to see the way other people are performing, and it doesn't affect your ranking rewards, right? We do get different rewards here. So it is a different landscape entirely. And I feel like maybe players who still enjoy the Hoyoverse content decided to stay on and do that. And, you know, some of them maybe just have come back to play Honkai Impact 3rd on the side. So when players do that, story becomes a core part of the game. And in my personal opinion, and I made a video about this about a year ago, so we're gonna read the comments on that later as well, I think they kind of dropped the ball when they introduced part 2. Because for me, story, the two main things that are keeping me like super interested is, one, the link from part 1 to APHO. And not gonna lie, I expected 1.5 to immediately jump into that and kind of like give us more and more, and like start introducing like APHO stuff or, you know, characters and whatnot, but they're just taking their time, which is fine. And I feel like if any other player had that same expectation as I did, that would have been the point where they're like, okay, I'm not getting what I want off of the story. The other point is, I think they are eventually going to link us to the Honkai Star Rail universe. Obviously, with Sparkle, they have kind of started doing that, but my take is that in Star Rail, they started exploring from the very start the homelands of the Astral Express crew, right? So starting with the Xianzhou, they explored Imbiber de Lune, it was Danheng, and then now they're going on to like March 7th and the Trailblazer, which is a bit of a surprise. And then the next two, like who else do we have? Like Pom Pom. I don't think we're gonna explore Pom Pom's story that soon, so it's probably gonna be Himiko and then Welt, or like Welt then Himiko, something like that, in that kind of vein. And I do keep wondering what's gonna happen, and I do, you know, feel like that is one of the points that compels me to really stay really interested in the story. I don't know if anyone, like any old time player, like since since 1 and 1.5 are really just like super interested to be like, oh, introduce me to this new crew of like Helia and Coralie and like Senadina, who, you know, again is one point where like I feel like they kind of like dropped the ball in it. I don't know if they felt like they were aura farming or like generating like mystery points or something like that, but why introduce a character like Senadina and then just cut her out of the story entirely? I applaud the creativity and you know, I'm not a story writer, so maybe I don't know the best way to tell a story, but I feel like at some point I was lost in the plot. And I feel like it's because the devs also lost the plot. But, you know, it being Honkai Impact and us being with the game for this long, I am 100% sure they will stick the landing. But right now, I'm just saying we are just jumping through a lot of storms and it's a rough storm. One of the other things that I had, one of the issues that I had was in that video that I made about a year ago about part 2 just starting off really slow. We're already in an ARPG that is known to be really fast paced. And your game has hit like a number of peaks in the past with the story. You can't just start off in this world that's even more casual than your most casual game as advertised, Zenless Zone Zero. What I mean is that like you advertise Zenless Zone Zero to be this casual game, yet it started off with more stakes. It had that flash forward of like what's gonna happen to the siblings and stuff like that. And then it pulls you back in and, you know, we go through the story. I feel like if you make that comparison, Zenless Zone Zero had so much more stakes at the start. Even Honkai Star Rail actually. It started with like Herta space station getting attacked and stuff like that. And we see none of that in part 2. I want to even make the comparison to Genshin, but Genshin kind of started off slow. It's only when Devalian came over to Mondstadt and was like, oh, tornadoes. And then maybe it didn't even feel that high stakes, but you know, maybe a little bit. And I feel like with Honkai Impact 3rd, we saw none of that. So if you're an old player, if you're a new player, chapters 1 to 3 was just a lot of walls of text. I went back and looked at some of my playthroughs. There's a lot of walls of text. There's a lot of dialogue, not a whole lot of action. And for some people who played early, they were facing device issues. That's a whole different point. But like, if you're talking about story writing, you know, it's just not that immersive, even though I feel like they wanted it to be immersive. And when I made that first video, I think a lot of people were saying, you know, it's too early to say, let them cook. So now a year later, they have cooked. And I feel that after 3EX, the story did start to pick up. And I do like the direction where the story is going. I do think there's still a lot of loose ends. For example, I think the Anchor of Apocalypse, the Fear Gathering especially, the 10 Faces of Misery, like even now, if, me telling you 10 Faces of Misery, are you even gonna like clearly remember or understand what that is? And then what else? I mean, even the 7 Shoes themselves and the Pool of Shadows, like they came and gone. I feel like a lot of them weren't properly introduced or explained. And then right now, like none of them amount to anything. And this is very like Honkai Impact 3rd style, right? So maybe I am being a little bit too harsh on it, but I feel like, you know, we were just introduced to a bunch of stuff and then the story just took none of those directions, right? Like maybe they're exploring the 7 Shoes, but then, okay, spoiler warning, because we're going to go into details to the story if you haven't played part 2. But initially, we could only speculate that Mars was actually destroyed, right? And then that they had created bubble universes for the citizens to kind of like evacuate into, and now they're in this state of limbo where it's like they're trying to find a way to revive their planet and sort of like get out of this bubble universe situation. So, you know, with that assumption, we slowly get introduced to the 7 Shoes, who are maybe the equivalent to the Flame Chasers, and you know, we get them all together and finally confront the manifestation of this shadow entity, which seems to be the big bad in Mars. And so we think like, oh, we're getting to some kind of resolution here. But then we get the big reveal. and we're told that Helia and Coralie actually only managed to find a quantum computer that holds the entire history of Mars. And we can't really explore it normally. We have to explore it in this like messed up way. And you know, it's for plot, right? It's basically, we know nothing about what's happening. Some god is still in the computer and messing with us, and it is the administrator, and all these like login shenanigans keep happening, right? And I feel like at least the people around me have not really been enjoying that part of the arc, the story arc. I'm kind of indifferent towards it. I feel like, sure, you want to change up the way your characters feel and all that, that's fine, but there have been some characters where they just dropped the ball in the design. Like, I didn't like EP Terry. I actually am a really huge fan of Durandal, but I didn't really like the idea of like them nerfing her by turning her into a kid. I don't know, just me. Stuff like that. I applaud them for wanting to bring something new and going in a new direction, but I don't think any of these have actually been making the game more interesting for me. That's my personal opinion. So I would like to see you guys' opinion on that as well. But sorry, I went on a huge tangent. But anyway, so we're going back, right? So the history that we're exploring of the Mars computer is kind of messed up, or generally of Mars's history is kind of messed up. So now we've been introduced to like multiple versions of the same characters, and we don't really know like who's the real version of who. You know what I mean? Like we saw Songche as this person who eventually inherited all the powers of Shu, and then she defeated the shadows. And then we see this other Songche who's like a thief story writer thing, and in that world it's like the Shus are different people, they did different things. So is this like a different timeline, or what is it, you know? So was Mars getting reset in the past? Who knows, right? So now it's like, I don't know any of these characters. Basically that. I was going to say like, I don't know if I'm attached to any of these characters, but I think at the core of it, I don't know any of these characters. One other example is like Chen Xie, who, you know, initially we thought like, oh, we're looking at her past version because right now she's this professor-like character and she's really intelligent and whatnot. And now we're being introduced to this character who's wearing, you know, like she's like a gangster-ish kind of version of her. So we think like maybe she matures and she becomes this professor version, and then she dies. And I'm like, so it's not their past self. What are we looking at? And, you know, I applaud the creativity in storytelling, and knowing Honkai Impact 3rd, like I said, they usually do stick the landing, but I just can't help but feel like in this journey, we're just they're losing the attention of a lot of people, because I feel like the connections that we were allowed to build with the other characters through part 1 and 1.5 were more tangible, were more like we could see the growth of them. For example, if you take Bronya, right? Bronya wasn't a character that I was very attached to at the start. I just felt she was such a side character and she didn't have any contribution to like the main plot. But then over time, you know, I think it started to pick up when, you know, there's the Black Nucleus arc. And then after that, she kind of like fried her brain chip, and it was like, whoa, Giga Chad, you know, she did that just to save her friends. And then they were working on her on the Hyperion, and Fuho helped her out. And then Drive Kometa arc, not Drive Kometa, I mean, Yamabuki Armor came out, and I was like, whoa, really cool. And then, you know, she eventually is ascended to becoming the House of Reason. And I think that was the point I really became like a Bronya fan. I'm like, wow. You know, Bronya has been this side character, but if you look at her history in the game, you know, she has grown a lot, and all these are like very logical, like steps, very believable steps of like how someone can grow into this role. But with the part 2 characters, I'm just feeling lost, because I just feel like they're messing with us. You know, okay, Helia and Coralie, fine. You know, we're still progressing, but they've become more like side characters, and that is the issue with them. But then you have like Senadina, who was introduced and then lost. So her I don't have a problem with, because I feel like she's gonna have a huge payoff later on, right? She's gonna come back and they'll be like, oh, she was this character all along. So the way they like put her in the story and like take her out, I think it's a little bit abrupt, but I think this one's acceptable. But then I think I have a huge issue with the Shus, because who are these characters? You know what I'm saying? Like, who are these characters, and like, what's the actual version of them? And where do they stand in the story? Probably they're going to come back in and they're going to do the same thing that I kind of like said they're going to do with Senadina, but I just feel like they've kind of lost me on them. I have no connection to these characters, and I think like if a player like me who's been with the game for so long and gives them the benefit of the doubt every single turn, how are you going to retain the attention of newer players, right? So yeah, that's all I really have to say about part 2 in terms of both meta and story. That I think like that really encompasses like where I'm feeling the current state of the game is right now from a player's perspective. If you're talking about like from a community standpoint, like, you know, I don't have numbers of like how many active players were in part 1 and part 1.5 and how much has that grown or dropped to in part 2. Like, I don't have any of those stats, but we will be looking at the comments of the videos that I did. Let's start with the one I did before a year ago. Let's go here. So this video was a year ago, honest opinion of part 2. I basically talked about how I felt that their gameplay was not connected to the story. It's just like gameplay is for the sake of gameplay and story is just like its own thing. and it's very like disjointed. You see, like the first comment was also like Rosen OG, and it was 100 times more lenient than me reviewing part 2, right? So people were agreeing with me, but they felt like I was not being harsh. Missed the stage chapters. This is a very common sentiment. So this one, I feel like it might be like a nostalgia thing. So I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt and say that I'm okay with stages, but I also actually am liking the new format. I'm okay with both of them. I think the new format isn't as bad as people feel it is, but in terms of like going back to recap, it is a lot harder, that's for sure. So they have to find a solution for that. I don't think people are that much like not enjoying the delivery method. I think it's more of like they want to understand the lore the way they used to be able to. And then my gripe with part 2 is the fact that, like you said at the end of the video, no new endgame to do. Oh, I said that? Yeah, actually, with the new mechanics and everything, they should be adding stuff to kind of like keep up with that, right? I don't know, maybe the creativity teams have been brought over to the other games, who knows? Even as an old player, the exposition part 2 has already... These are a year-old comments, by the way, just reminding you guys. Maybe I should have expected it. Since the past 2 years, the story has been exposition heavy. I really hope the devs would stop lore dumping for such a large part of the main story. I remember groaning after the first 20 minutes. Yo, 20 minutes is a little bit... Yeah, you gotta give it more time, you know? But okay, I can see it. I personally like the open world. Okay, we have someone who agreed with me. I like the Star Rail like style and some puzzles. I'm not a fan. I feel like the puzzles in Star Rail feel more whole though. I'm not a fan of overly convoluted exploration like the Genshin in Fontaine or even in Penconi. To be honest, the story is so far from Honkai and the enjoyment I had with part 1 and part 1.5. So, like I mentioned earlier, you know, I think a lot of the old player base is still does compare it fairly to part 1 and 1.5, and I'm not saying do everything the same. What I'm saying is that they could have done what they used to do but try to build on it and improve, but instead it's like the change wasn't great. And back to what I said, you know, you gotta give it to them for trying, but it's just unfortunate that it wasn't. You know, it's just losing the flavor of the game. I really miss stages. Open world feels too much like a checklist with no meaning behind it. I quit doing story. Oh no, around the end of auto arc because open world just became too exhausting. I guess there's also that, right? Because if you're I think the objective of open world was to, one, they kept saying they want to try something new, so they are trying something new. And the other might be because they want to attract a new player base. I don't know how important it is for them to attract a new player base though. But with the reasons I mentioned earlier about how, you know, a lot of players saw part 1, the end of part 1 as a definitive ending for the story, then I think they were already anticipating that, right? They must have been thinking like, if we're gonna continue, we need to expect that a lot of players would feel like part 1 is the good ending, and then how are we gonna freshen up the game for a new player base? I have no comments on whether or not that is the right move. I really can't say. I don't know how it's working out for them either. That's all I can say. I didn't pay much attention to the story, so I couldn't say anything about that. However, I didn't really like the map design at the moment. It just reminded me of APHO. What's wrong with APHO? And it didn't make me feel like I was on another planet. Oh, okay. So it's not that there's anything wrong with APHO. It just felt like we were still on Earth in APHO. The combat was fun for sure, and I tried to use the new characters whenever I got the chance. I guess with Genshin, Age of Signs is easy out there. The new Honkai Impact 3rd seems to struggle to find its own identity. Yo, this is pretty much what I'm saying. Other than being the mother game that gave birth to the other 3, I don't know. By the way, it's the sister game. The mother game, I would say, is Honkai Gakuen. Some would even say it's Fly Me to the Moon, but I feel like Gakuen was when they got their real jumpstart, and then Impact 3rd just like, you know, wiped the floor of every other gacha game of its time. I played Honkai for the story and haven't played it since the end of part 1. See, I didn't pre-read these. Although these are a year-old comments, I feel like I wouldn't have remembered. I did read them when the comments were made back then, but like I haven't come back to like refresh my memory. So I played for 5 years. Started playing after seeing the cutscene of Himiko dead. And I was hooked to the story and cried about it. Cried when it ended. I think Hoyoverse won't make another story like that or story cutscene with that dedication. As we can see from their other games, with their story are just not done with that dedication that was giving us... Okay, this might be like a bit of like nostalgic sentiment. I wouldn't say the stories have dropped in quality. All I'd say is that the other games have different formats, but I do think ZZZ will come close because ZZZ right now, I think the central characters are a lot more central than even in Honkai Star Rail, right? And Genshin, the central characters just don't exist. But in Star Rail, at least, we're following the Astral Express. They seem to be central to the plot, and they kind of are. But I think ZZ is where it's really at when they're talking about like building a connection to the main crew, like they did in Honkai Impact. So I'd keep my eye on that one. I think in terms of story, the main problem of part 2 is that the first chapter takes the exact same approach as the other introductory chapters. Really slow exposition heavy. I get what you mean. Us longtime players don't mind it because we know the exposition will be. See, this is like, oh, this is the community here, right? I also said, I feel like they will always stick the landing, so we need to give them time, but it's the same sentiment. You know, it's super long, it's a drag, and like, even though we give them the benefit of the doubt that it'll eventually pay off, you're losing people in the process. That's not how you make a game appealing for new players. Even with the introductory nature of the chapter, they really should have added more spectacle and style for new players to munch on. True! This is very well worded. It's made even worse by the fact that each chapter is released in relatively small chunks each week in the classic insufferable addiction bagging nature of mobile games. Oh my god. Now remember, you gotta return next week at the same time. Yeah, I think it's unfortunate also because I realized, like, me being a content creator, the way I digest story has become different, right? I don't split my story streams up as much as I should, so I like to play it in one go, and I feel like sometimes it's not the right way to consume the story. You know what I'm saying? It's like I buy a box of cereal and they give me the amount of serving per meal, but I'm like, nah, I'm just gonna finish the whole box right here. So maybe it's also like the way we are consuming the story that's also not being healthy, but I do agree with that, especially because the patches right now are a lot longer. This point was made a year ago before the patches have even become that long, so I think this problem has become worse. I feel like the 7 shoes comes a bit too fast. Okay, they should explore more on the Langcho and Osha a bit more, okay, instead of dumping all of them totally on logbooks. I agree with you. The NPC quest so far feels like Color Stone all over again. They didn't matter to the world building or expanding the narrative. Yeah, they're like daily commission level quests instead of world quest level in Genshin. I feel like I stopped paying attention. In the past, I used to read because I always felt like, oh, it's gonna give us more information on the world. It's gonna tell us like stuff that we're wondering about the world. But I feel like recently I started tuning out of it because it's just none of them actually have any lore implications, which is kind of sad. It's crazy to me how much better even the early part 1 story was compared to this, despite all the graphical improvements they've made. I'm being lenient because it's all new and maybe this is just a low point, though having a low point right off the bat wasn't smart. See, the same sentiment! Part 1 players unite, man. Or like Honkai Impact 3 players in general. It feels like they rushed to give us all the exposition for Osha Langcho. It would have been much better idea to separate the story into arcs that focus on certain main characters, backstories, and development that each form into a larger plot and give world building along the way. Like how a long anime would set up or how part 1 was set up. How was part 1 set up? One day, we should do a stream or maybe I'll do a video. And I feel like we should break down like how part 1 went and like what in part 1 made us really attached to the story and what in part 2 is lacking that part 1 had. In my opinion, what's lacking in part 2 is the interaction in the new map. Oh, I have this issue too. I feel like the map just doesn't feel alive, you know? There are many things that are shown but cannot be interacted with, making it feel less interesting. I totally understand that. For example, I wanted to buy a drink at a drink vending machine, and after interacting, I could get a drink to increase. Oh, like if I wanted to do that. It would be kind of pointless, but it would definitely add so much more to the game. Mixing part 2. Wait, actually, would it be pointless? It probably wouldn't, because if we start exploring, how do we heal, right? Like in APHO, we just log out and over time it's going to heal. But if you had like a vending machine thing, there would be a little bit of fun to it. I got to know about Honkai Impact because of a sponsor, and I don't regret my decision, as the game looked cool. Nice. As a new player, I absolutely hate this semi-open world mechanic. Wait, new player. Okay. Stages are just better. Wait, as a new player, you're already like, so that means this person picked up the game and played part 1, maybe 1.5, and then they got used to the stages, and then boom, they got thrown into the semi-open world, and you're like, bro, put me back in. Some talking, some history. It's fun to play and not draining like what I feel like what the stages do, which is this is really true though. They feel like the NPCs just don't give us any good interaction. I feel like what the stages did for us is that it gave us proper pacing. And I feel like one of the things that stages do really well that they can achieve that open world cannot achieve is each stage, if you write it well, can end on a cliffhanger. So when the stage comes to a stage conclusion, you get that, wait, that's it? I need more. And so you go on to the next stage and you go on to the next stage. But when it's like an open world, like one-shot story, you can't do that. And like it becomes a whole different beast. I think like in terms of like storytelling, stages have that charm that open world just doesn't have. I feel after Color Stern, the game turned into long yap sessions. I feel like during Coral Stern, that's what happened. Once they introduced like all the scientists like Nagamitsu and Einstein and Tesla started coming back to do more exposition, like Elysian Everlasting, Moon, Hash of Zele. Bros got their own name for like except for Elysian Everlasting, okay, right? And then Moon, just Moon, not Moon Arc, whatever, Moon. Hash of Zele. My God, okay, becoming Hash of Rebirth. 20 Vitas and all that Fuhua. Oh my God. I gotta go back. So I have this premium account. That's why you see me using like premium. It's not like my main MG account, but like I'll go back and heart this one. If there are games with long yap sessions, I'd expect to see a Hideo Kojima game, but those yap sessions affiliated. What is that? Wait, Kojima's games aren't that. Okay, maybe sometimes, but still. Anyway, at least those are worth listening to. Yeah, like I played Death Stranding, right? I played like all the Metal Gears. I played Death Stranding. It doesn't even feel yap, you know? Because it's like a cinematic experience. But anyway, I've been playing since 2019, and I think part 2 is good and more in line with today's standards. Oh, whoa, okay. The gameplay is basically an improvement over APHO and previous semi-open world modes. Ooh, some positivity here. Story is also good. Remember, this is just the beginning. Don't compare it with part 1, which has more than 30 chapters. So just to recap, this was when there were only 3 chapters in part 2. We get a lot of fragments of information about Mars. This is clearly a hint for part 2 of the story in the future. Okay, so what you're saying is like this is just a setup phase, right? Some say that the 7 shoes appeared too quickly. I think that's not true. Those who said that were basically equating 7 shoes with flame shower. Oh my God, I made this comparison in this video. But to be fair, I think the like immediately relating the shoes to the flame chasers is fair because they were touted to be like saving the planet, right? And that's what the flame chasers did. And they're also a group of powerful individuals. So I think it's really fair that people make that assumption. But anyway, for me, 7 shoes are the characters who will be our guides to the planet of Mars. A year later, I don't know. I'm really looking forward to development of part 2 in the future. And it's time to get ready to welcome Lantern. Oh, Lantern, peak character design. 2100 plus days on SEA server. By the way, I didn't show you guys, but I didn't remember to, but thanks to the comment for reminding me. So mine is here, 2537 days. I did miss a few days login when I was traveling and stuff like that, but generally, you know. Anyway, on SEA, part 2 story is just straight up boring. With just too much expositions. This person has played as long as I have. If this is a year ago, right now they should be close, like their login days should be about the same as mine. I feel like I was playing the Moonbase arc all over again. Moonbase arc was, I mean, it had its downtime, but it was mostly good. If this is an attempt to cater to new players, I'm afraid they failed so bad. So that is the general sentiment. Most players who have played for a long time are trying to look at it from the new player's perspective. And that's fair, right? Because like we can also think of that perspective of like if we're picking up a new game. So they also feel like it wasn't even made for new players when that seems to be the main target player base, I think. They need to pull another chapter 8 miracle again. Okay, at this point I don't really agree with. I don't think they need to do that. I think the story just has to be more engaging and we need to understand the characters better. I think the main cast is a mess right now, and that's my biggest issue. Judging from the comments of a lot of people didn't like it, which is a shame. Apparently, I'm in the minority because I enjoyed it quite a bit. I also didn't have any technical issues. Well, to be fair, I didn't, but even with my really advanced phone and PC, I faced like a couple of bugs. at that time. Maybe I had a better experience because I didn't expect much. I was treating it like the beginning of part 1. It was clear to me that nothing major was going to happen. So this is something that a lot of people fail to do, or like, to be fair, you know, they don't have to, but I've seen a lot of sentiment of like, oh my god, my characters in part 1 are all useless now. It feels like blah blah blah, but it's hard, right? Because I think I appreciate a lot that the devs made part 2, so we can still have whatever it is we collected over the years. Yes, they might not be meta, but at least, you know, they're still part of the game, and you can still use them, you know. They're not gonna be that useful, but you could still use them. I know it's a bit of a copium perspective, but I just appreciate that it wasn't wipe. You know what I'm saying? What would the other solution have been? They made a new game, and then Honkai Impact 3rd maybe is still running, so you can log in and look at your old characters, but there's this other new game. You know, I don't know. There's no real one solution, so this is unprecedented, right? And these devs, they're just trying whatever they think can work. So I'm just along for the ride. You know, I'm not saying what they're doing is good or bad. I'm just saying that I'll just play the game if I still like it, and for most part I still do. But whether it's working or not, it's hard to say. It was clear to me that nothing major is gonna happen. Okay, wait. So we're still on the positive perspective. We just got introduced to cast after the story was done. The atmosphere of Langchiu was not my favorite, though, because it reminded me too much of APHO. Oh, this is a similar perspective to the one we read upside. The word I'm looking for is above. I can explore the other bubble universe. Oh, I can't wait to explore the other. You know what? It feels like it's taking a long time to get to the other bubble universes. You know what I'm saying? Well, we did just come to the 3rd one, but Anyway, I honestly like Dreamseeker, Sandina, and Songche already. Dreamseeker being fully voiced and being an actual character is such a big W. Oh, I was really scared they would go to Genshin HSR. Wait, HSR is doing fine though with their main character. Anyway, Helly and Coralie got an awesome introduction. I'm not gonna read the entire thing. Oh, they're hoping for a nightmare difficulty. Yeah, I think gameplay is starting to stagnate. I recently made this joke. Actually, not really. I'm half joking, but also I feel like they should start introducing like SSS plus difficulty in the Memorial Arena. Maybe they can make another tier. So now the max level, captain level is 88. Maybe they can make like a level 90, and then they can give us like an SSS plus tier. So it becomes like, instead of 2 triple S bosses and 1 double S, they could make like a triple S plus, triple S, and double S. I don't know if that's gonna fix anything, but it could be a bit of a band-aid solution for now until they work on like more endgame, right? So that could be a thing. Don't know, but we'll see. I hope they stop having too many talking and walking quests in the game. They should have separated the cutscenes outside the stage itself. They're trying to make it like Genshin or whatever to appeal to a larger player base. Maybe? There's a lot of errand running and talking to NPCs now. The stages had their own charm. Their games don't have the same format. Don't have to be the same format. True. Biggest sin Hoyo done in this game is making me do manually cutscenes. What does that mean? Oh... Manual cutscenes is a nice way to put it, I guess. So this is referring to, like, you know, parts in the story where we, like, a certain character is talking and then we're just like walking behind them, and then we have to, it's not even like the text box. So if we miss the dialogue, we miss it entirely because there's no way to check the history. So there's so much, like, it's so much of a detriment to have that. But to be fair, that's not new though. We had that in even as far as like maybe even chapter 1, but the only difference is that they didn't put that much dialogue in the manual cutscenes in the past. I don't think we can read like all of them. 900 plus day account. Story has a lot of clutter and mumbo jumbo. Yeah. I'm someone that enjoys the open world a lot more than the stage gameplay. Oh, okay. I think the main problem people have with the open world chapters in general is the pacing. I agree with that. I think it goes back to my point of saying that, you know, with separate stages, you can leave each stage on a cliffhanger, and it could be more compelling to just continue with the story. After part 1.5, the story kind of fell off. It feels that way because we're in the setup, we're in like the phase where they're setting it up, but you know, I can't totally agree with that one. Me personally would like to have less visual novel story cutscenes. I think they've achieved that. Whether it's good or not, I have no idea. As a new player doing both part 1 and 2 story, part 2 is right now pretty mid, despite how much I want to like it. Oh, story has so much yapping and didn't hook me the same way HSR story did. I hate to compare. Ooh, HSR player who picked up Honkai Impact. I hate to compare this to Stario, but it felt like part 2 is trying to emulate how Genshin and HSR present their stories, but it felt pretty flat. I totally agree. Totally fair. If they're gonna make the story mostly yapping, at least make it interesting. Otherwise, keep that out and put more combat in. Agreed. Totally agreed. If you're combat based, you should just keep more combat in. Though I only started during Senti's release. I much prefer the stages rather than the open world system. Oof. A lot of things to be improved, but NPC errands so far aren't that intriguing and fun enough. Oh, yet another one. Yet another comment about the NPCs. The NPCs are NPCing, you know? They're earning their title as NPCs. From my perspective, anyone playing HI 3rd would have to play some of part 1 and before part 2. True. And if they got hooked to that or fun events, then the game hit them. I'm trying hard to grasp what that comment meant, but maybe I will someday. Okay, part 2 doesn't click with me yet, probably because it's not the Kiana trio. Okay, so this is a nostalgic take, right? It's like, because it's not Kiana. Fair? Fair? You know, I don't think anyone mentioned what I mentioned about how APHO is a driving force to why I like the story, why I still continue with the story, and HSR is also another driving force. I think most people are just looking at the story as the story itself, which is, I feel, how you should look at it. And yeah. So quick question, is part 1 still worth it? Yeah, of course it is. I tried Honkai Impact 3rd very long ago and wanted to, oh my god, I didn't reply to this person. Sorry, my bad. Part 1 is still worth it. If you're somehow watching this video, it is. So far, everything that happens in the story doesn't resonate with me. The communication between characters, the plot, and this arc. The story presentation is slightly better, but very boring most of the time because the developer's spending time on lore and character development. That is an interesting take. The beginning of part 1 was perfect. We were on cool missions where we were shown the whole point of the Valkyries, who they are, what they do. Dev showed MCs properly. Part 2 didn't have an opening cutscene. Wait, part 2 did have an opening cutscene. It was just very arbitrary. It was the Senadina dancing scene, no? And that's a big deal in my opinion. I don't feel that Senna is as energetic as she's described. What? She kind of is, but anyway, she's not even close to as energetic as Kiana at the start of the game. I feel like she's a good balance. I actually like Senadina quite a bit, if she still exists. The cutscene of Helia and Coralie landing on Mars would have been perfect for an opening scene. It would, for sure. Oh, this is before the big reveal. And of course, looking forward to APHO storyline. Ah, finally! Okay, I'll say that it's too early. So this is one of the sentiments that I mentioned. I'll say that it's too early for everything. Design, story, characters, modes, narrative, everything. So now it's a year later. We'll look at the other video. The comments of the other video. In my opinion, part 1 didn't get good until Siren woke up. And stuff before that was super meh. I feel like their world building was stronger in part 1, but I will agree I didn't actually follow the story that much until Siren woke up, so same, a little bit same. But you know, gameplay was super intriguing for me until then, and I do think the story was quite confusing. But here's the thing, right? They could be confusing back then because they didn't really have direction. Now they're super experienced with part 1 and part 1.5 storytelling. Part 2 should take all that they've learned and just like, you know, go off from there, but it's not happening for some reason. I've been playing Honkai Impact since HOS. Became a loyal and addicted player, even drawing all characters. Damn! Honkai Part 1 meant so much to me. Sadly, Part 2 did not appeal to me that much. Things got boring and I personally did not feel like giving it a chance. Oof. So I decided to wait. Wait for the story to bring me back to Honkai. I feel like they forgot the spark that Honkai had, the difference it had from the other games. I miss having stages like the fight between Kiana and Mei. Maybe in future though. I don't know. Maybe we'll get some kind of Layla Senadina thing. But I feel like if they're trying to build up like Layla and Senadina to be on the level of Kiana and Mei, I think it'll take some more time. But with like, I think with Senadina not even being in the story, it's just not doing them any favors. You know what I'm saying? I'm not a veteran player, started playing for about 8 months after Star Rail, wanted to know the lore better. My opinion about part 2 so far, it's okay-ish. It's definitely way too early to judge about the story. Okay. Part 2 is great, good characters, amazing design, strong personalities, interesting plot. The Shu being mere humans in the face of calamity instead of being what everyone thought to be the 7 bosses to kill or something. So they're appreciating the down-to-earthness of it, I guess. Yeah, see, gacha burnout is one of the things I mentioned, right? It's just like, it's not because it's Honkai Impact 3rd or that the devs aren't doing well. It's just the player basis has been at the game for like a long time. So then we go on to the recent video, if I'm still playing Honkai Impact 3rd, and so I mentioned that I am. I joined the game when part 2 got released, but I never fully started the story until all of part 1 was completed. I may have decreased my playtime, but I'm still holding onto this game because of how important it was to making the other Horrorverse games and how amazing characters. Wait, I thought this was a sentiment that only old players had, but someone who joined during part 2 values it for having built up the other Horrorverse games. That's crazy. Yo, respect. It's been almost 4 years since I stopped playing Honkai Impact 3rd, so they kind of stopped even before the end of part 1. I do frequently watch clips of other people's clears of Abyss. Just can't find the time to grind anymore. This person likes the game for the game. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you still, it's like, I really like the game for its gameplay and what it is, but I don't have the time to play it, but I like to see where it's going, I guess. I play since Elysian Realm, and it's still my favorite out of the Horrorverse games. Really? I recently started ZZ, and it doesn't hit the same. Ooh. I mean, it's not supposed to be the same. I don't vibe with it as much. I get what you mean. I do like Starfield a lot though. Looking forward to new content. Thank you. Thank you. I've been playing since 6.8 and it was a lot to take in at first, but a lot of players just told me to play my own pace and don't feel overwhelmed. After a week or so, I got the hang of it and quickly fell in love with the game. Ooh, so it is still attracting new players even without part 2. So then it brings me back to, is part 2 actually losing new players? That will be a video for another day. The story especially caught my attention and how well done it was, which made me want to keep playing along with how the Battlesuit gameplay evolved over time. Part 2's first chapter was really rough. Okay, we share that same sentiment. But every chapter afterwards has been getting better and better now. So this is not like a 1 year ago one. This is like 4 days ago, plus a day or 2, depending on how quickly I post this video. But every chapter afterwards has been getting better and better. And now the recent chapters of part 2 have actually been extremely well done. Okay, so this is up to like a chapter 7 review. I mean, not review, but like sentiment. I'm now actively interested in part 2 story and seeing where it goes after recent chapters. Yeah, okay, yeah, I mean, same. I think they're spicing it up, but the build up, it wasn't there. In regards to the meta, I honestly feel like people worry about it way too much. For me personally, as long as I can maintain the thin line between Red Lotus and Nirvana, I'm honestly okay. Ooh, that's a really healthy spot to be in. I still do think part 2's battlesuits are much more FCP friendly than part 1's due to how versatile they are. Ooh, that could be another video, because some people are saying part 2 is rougher on the gacha side of things and some people are saying it's more FTP friendly. I do think the sentiment that is more FTP friendly has been popping up more in recent times than when part 2 first came out. How versatile they are, the fact that they can fully functional DPS as well as supports, they can be fully functional DPS as well as supports a variety for the team. Yeah, I think they're trying to do this for all the Horrorverse games. I don't know if it's good or bad, but I think they're trying to move towards like a everyone does a little bit of something instead of the 1 DPS and 2 support system. I also like how since part 2, Hoyo has been addressing multiple issues with the game and improving it for players. My one complaint currently is the lack of new endgame game mode. Oh my god, that was since a year ago and it's still... I think we're due for like a review on endgame difficulty or a new endgame game mode in general. Relatively new Honkai Impact 3rd player who joined doing the HSR collab. Wow, that is very new. Just subscribe, looking forward to more HI 3rd content. Thank you, thank you. As someone who still plays this game for more or less than 8 years? Wow, wait, has it been that long? 8 years, 2017. Yeah, damn, day 1 player. Oh, Mashiro, I think I know who this is. Constantly on the leaderboards, top 100, for sure. I can share the same sentiment. The leaderboard is what keeps me glued to this game, but recently, or rather since part 2, the amount of time I play the game decreased a lot. I used to stay in Nirvana for part 2, but now I frequently get Sinful? Wait! You're like a top 100 player, and now you just safely stay at Sinful. I get, like, it's a lot less effort, right? You basically, with an arsenal that gets you in top 100 of Nirvana, if you're in Sinful, you just need one battlesuit and you're one-shotting everything. You don't even need a team, essentially. Probably because I'm busy at work. So I think it's also because like the player base has grown up, right? 7 years, 8 years is a lot of time. And everyone who used to be students or just started working would be working for a much longer time now. And life, you know, kicks you in the butt most of the time, if not all the time. Or just doing nerdy stuff like researching AI papers related to programming. Probably a software engineer. I don't know if this is true. I don't have the stats for it, but I think a lot of the T100 players are software engineers. Anyway, back on track. To be fair, you don't have to put out HI3 a lot of HI3 content. People know that the core of HI3 is its story. Which is funny, right? Because I feel like the core of HI3 is its gameplay to me. But the thing about HI3 gameplay is it's not very understood by people who don't play the game. And I think like even in the past when I used to stream my endgame content, a lot of people would like tune into streams, and I feel like a lot of people said they chose to watch me play it because I always explained what was going on, and whenever there were parts of the strats that I couldn't get through, I would start to explain why. And I was also fortunate enough that the other T100 players would sometimes be in chat, so I could ask them like parts that I didn't understand. And that's like coming from like a top 100 player, not even like totally understanding the game. But you know, I feel like that is where HI3 shines because it keeps the game fresh and interesting, even for people who are consistently playing it. But then from a content creation standpoint, gameplay just falls off because nobody understands what you're seeing. You could be doing like the best run ever and they're like, okay, because they just don't know what they're looking at. I started playing just after the first anniversary, or so 6-something years now. Whoa! It's a comforting and enjoyable daily routine, and I don't see myself stopping anytime soon. Ooh, nice. Same. I'm also interested in the lore connection between the games. Same! Didn't pay much attention to what people say about HI3 on social media, but the player base is pretty ancient. Yep, we're up there. We're like the eons now. Yeah, so in this video I mentioned, you know, there were some other, like sometimes I would see people just saying like, because they're talking about like a bunch of Horrorverse games together, and so they mention HI3 just because it's part of the Horrorverse umbrella, and they're just like, yeah, but who even plays that game, right? So I think like this comment is relating to that. When I seen this, the community is definitely still there, lurking and popping up on new Captain streams and videos. I think it's a much better approach to have instead of pointlessly arguing with those that aren't even playing the I mean, true, but yeah, I mean, I feel like it's not something where I'm like arguing or like I'm not saying you're saying I'm doing that, but like I'm just saying it wasn't like I'm offended by comments like that. I'm just saying like the game from the outer perspective has come to that point where some people are saying, do people even play that game anymore? If that's what you want to do, then don't feel pressure to make. This is also one of the things I love about the HI3 community is that I think it is the most mature community, both in terms of how, you know, I guess age, because of how long the game has been standing, but also just in mindset. Because I wouldn't say it's only now that the community has matured. I think like even since the start of me creating content, I've already noticed that the community has been very logical. It's never been like super like offensive to other people. It's just, I mean, obviously people like that exist in any community, but for the most part, I think like people in the Honkai Impact Community have been very logical with the way they respond to things and break things down. And yeah, I think in the gacha space currently, it is lacking a lot of people like that. So, you know, if you are part of the Honkai Impact community, start being active again. That's all I'm saying. Just seeing all those triple S, knowing they're unusable now, the amount of money spent hurts my soul. Don't be sad that it ended. Be happy that it happened. Is what I'm going. I don't know if I'm quoting that right, but let's go. I used to play so much in part 1. I've been interested in coming back sometime to play more. Looking forward to content. Thank you. Looking forward to you coming back to the game. I still love this game. Nice. Short and sweet. Started playing the game when part 2 came out. Ooh. Going between that as well as part 1 and Honkai Star Rail has been a great experience. Seeing XPs of characters like Raiden, Mei, and Himiko make me excited to see how they are different or similar from the ones I have come to care about in Honkai Impact 3rd. I think that's part of what makes me excited about the game too. I've been playing for more than 3 years now. Part 2 may not be as good as part 1, story-wise until now. This sentiment has withstood the test of time, which I'm saying that like it's a good thing, but it's not, right? Like from the video earlier, that was a year ago, this exact same sentiment. And the gameplay is certainly a level up. Rotations may be harder to understand. I'm sorry to contradict you, but I did earlier say that it is easier to understand right now. But it's very flexible, and there isn't a need to pull for a certain pivotal battle suit anymore. Glad to see there's some people still enjoying this game. Yep. Can't blame you. HSR is where the money's at. You know, honestly, I just don't make money off of content creation. I'll just be completely honest, right? Like, I think I have a lot of issues with confidence, I guess, on like my mindset going into things is always like nobody's gonna watch it anyway. And I think that is more prominent in the past, where if you look at a lot of my old videos, it's either minimal or no ads at all, because I keep thinking like if people watch the video and an ad pops up, that's it, they're clicking out of it. So I don't know like why I have a mindset like that, but maybe, you know, I don't know if I need to change out of it, but that it is what it is, just relating that. So I don't think HSR being my main content would be like a motivation in any way. It really is just because the account was F2P, and at one point, I think all my interest in HSR kind of really spans or comes from the fact that I hope one day we start to get to see more traces of Honkai Impact 3rd. Can't do much of Honkai Impact 3rd because, as people said, the core of the game is in its story. Oh, we don't have much because of the 9... Yeah, what's up with the 9-week patches anyway? I love Helia's Arkville. Can't wait for her Battlesuit release next patch. Ooh, yeah, that's something to be excited about. Playing since 2018, pretty much since global launch. It's my first gacha game and I still play because I still enjoy it, even if the story has become a bit meh. Playing since 2 years, not done with part 1, but played 1.5 and started with 2. Since 2 years, must be more of like a gameplay player, so that's why you haven't caught up with the story, I guess. Out of all the Horrorverse games I played, Honkai Impact 3rd retains the novelty across all the changes that has happened to the game, which is why years later, I still find it fun to play. The excitement of also seeing CN players discover animation cancels and strats still retains up to this date. I would put it on my list of one of my favorite games. I used to be an HSR player, but quit, wait, what? Not even a week in 3.0 due to how little effort they put into the recent patches. Really? Looking at the anniversary, it also looks sad how empty it is. The quality of HSR, in my opinion, has gone down after its first anniversary, where seemingly people praise. I think what it is when a gacha game is new, people seem to be in that honeymoon phase, right? And sometimes people just like their interests fall off after that, and sometimes people find something that they love in the game and they continue to play it. But yeah, recently I've also quit ZZ. Oh no, the game feels empty as well. Fair, that's fair. ZZ's story has been a little bit bland for me, but I think the build-up is there. It's like right now it's like in the low phase, but I think they're ramping up to something. But gameplay is always fresh. I enjoy the heck out of ZZ's gameplay. I've almost like found like a similar interest to ZZ's Deadly Assault mode that I still apply to Honkai Impact 3rd. I don't know how to word that properly, but I've been pushing for scores recently, but that's also because of how insanely highly ranked my characters are. I remember I started playing when the first release of the game came out, but never taking it too seriously until late 2019. Wow, a lot of old school players. I played daily till part 2 came out, which didn't quite hook me. 100% F2P managed to get all that I wanted in a game, so I had no reason to keep going. Oh no! See, this is what happens when you make things too easy. Fast forward to the new Kiana Battlesuit and I came back just to get her. Don't get what people say about how needy a game is. Yeah, I think I had a bit of a skewed perspective because the rates felt really bad. So I think I'm going to make a video on like the rates for part 2, but that might take a while because I want to do like some statistics on it. The game is fun, the grind is super chill nowadays, and you can spend more time playing the fun parts and hitting light button on the boring parts. Yeah, they have made really good improvements there. Part 1 characters being entirely outdated does hurt a bit, especially after how much we all pour our souls into them, but that's kind of how it goes. That is true. See, this is what I mean by Honkai Impact 3rd community being the most mature, right? I feel like a lot of people who play Honkai Impact 3rd understand the gacha scene, and so they understand the natural progression of a gacha game in relation to how old the game is. And a lot of things that people complain about, like, oh, this not as good as it used to be, or like this is bad now, or blah blah blah. It's something that happens in every gacha game, but you just have to have played enough gacha games to understand the concept, I guess. Joined since 2.9 Rita patch. No absentees till today. Excellent. Excellent. When was the last time they had an HI3 music video? When was the last time? Was it the capo? I mean, they had the shoe one, but it wasn't a music video. It was like a cutscene-ish thing. That was it, right? The Venerable 7 shoes, and then that's it. You are right on that point. When's our next song? Nobody knows. Instead, Stario has been getting more songs. I can't seem to remember, and looks like the release gap between APHO3 and 2 has already exceeded the gap between 2 and 1. Not gonna lie, I don't think APHO3 is something that's gonna happen, but you know. Also, I have a strong feeling that the Sparkle collab did not really bring a lot of No comment. I don't have stats, so I can't speak on those. Still here, I started doing November 2017. Wait, same. I only hope that the game has a good close worldwide, not like GGZ global. Ooh, they're already looking towards the end of it, beyond the part 1 ending. Oh wait, you were here in a year ago. Ah yes, those guys on YouTube and Twitter who never played a real guy. A real gamer classic gacha game in your life. There's, oh no, oh, you're taking it personally. Oh no, they're Hey, to be fair though, I think some of those, I guess, like content creators or communities have picked up Honkai Impact 3rd. It's not always negative. Just look at HSR Honkai fans going feral when a top-up event. Actually, I don't see the detriments of a top-up event, though. It's like, if you top up, you get more stuff. If you don't, too bad. That game, but I won't leave. I don't know if it's a dead game. Maybe that's a discussion for another day. But I won't leave. Okay, nice. I played for about 7 years. Vertex, I remember you, for finally quitting a few months ago. Oh, I don't know. I think HI3 needed to make the game more approachable with part 2 for the global audience. I really wish they introduced more dynamic cutscenes and actual EN dubs. I'm not that much of a big fan of EN dubs, so I can't comment to that one. I'm at that point where listening to long dialogues in a different language with too long still images put me to literal sleep. The game still holds a special place in my heart, but I definitely didn't feel part 2 as much as I thought I would. Fair, very fair. Honkai Impact is not really good game for content creation. I think it goes back to what I mentioned, right? Like, people just don't understand what they're looking at. I think the devs are letting the game die. Ooh, that's a hot take. The last important game mode feature was Elysian Realm, which was 3 years ago. Whoa, it's been that long. I mean, Elysian Realm does feel really old. And they haven't been updating, like, you know when they used to do like 2 battle suits, like one new and one old? They don't even do that anymore. So a lot of battle suits that I was hoping to be added into the Elysian Realm just haven't been added, which is kind of sad. There's nothing new in game modes, and now patches are 2 months long and it's rinse and repeat. So this person sounds like a very gameplay motivated player. Abyss has turned into cinematic gameplay now. I understand what you mean. Like, they've made a lot of the alties to have more like, to be more of a cinematic feel, and it kind of has lost the old flavor. The old flavor, even older than what I was mentioning. I don't hate the game, on the contrary, I still love the game, but there's a lot of games out there with similar mechanics with a lot more game modes and more rewards than Honkai, which is hurting the player base more and more each month. Story is still good. Okay, they do follow story. People that hate it, they hate it because they don't understand anything deep in the lore. Events are still the same chibi things that sometimes are a pain to do. Okay, fair. Fair Sky. Wait, Fair Sky's like a top 100 player. Oh no. Anyway, I dropped this game. They're too greedy in part 2 to the point where it's become pay to win. I feel like Honkai Impact is the least pay to win yet competitive game. And maybe I'll make a video on it, but I need to get my points together before I can actually talk about it. The game is outdated. HSR and ZZ are enough. Oof, oof. I mean, I wouldn't say the game is outdated. I feel like the game was ahead of its time for whenever it was. And so right now it's like in its time. Does that make sense? So it's not like outdated or anything. It's just been around for a really long time. And I would say part 2 was an attempt to overhaul the entire thing. Like, so much so that it almost feels different, right? Which I think is what the team thought it needed. But sometimes new isn't better. Maybe sometimes you just need an upgrade. Maybe some people like Kiana, and then you think that they need like a Siren. But actually what they want is just like an upgrade on Kiana. Does that make sense? Maybe that's a bad analogy, but that's what I'm saying, right? Sometimes you don't need, you know, new isn't always better. Sometimes better isn't always better. It's hard to even ascertain what is what. So you can only try your best. And if you're not sticking the landing, then stick it harder. Try harder, I guess. That's all I can say. But you know, I'm not a game developer. I'm not a writer. I can't say if what they're doing is good or bad. And I think with the team always having to thread new ground, to break new ground, is that the way you say it? It's just, we were here for all the times that they were making hits, and sometimes you just fall off, but hopefully they can regain their footing and the game can get back to a point where it has the same magic that it had when it just came out. But I think like Honkai Impact 3rd has never been that big of a game, if that makes sense, right? It's always been, even when it was at its peak, it was at that point of like, it wasn't that big of a gacha game even. And maybe it's because Genshin was so big that people started comparing it to Genshin and realizing like, oh, there's like an even bigger market out there for gacha games. I guess like in that vein, we can't really say that Honkai Impact 3rd has died. I think it's still pretty much where it is. So to be able to maintain that for 8 years, I think it's quite commendable. And this video has gone on for an hour and a half. I don't know if I'm going to post it like unedited, but I think that concludes the state of Honkai Impact 3rd. So yeah, if you guys followed the video all the way to the end, thank you guys for watching. And let me know what you guys think about all the points that were stated, and let me know your thoughts on the current state of the game. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to, I guess, grow again in the Honkai Impact 3 community. And I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.